Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fourth session of Wisconsin Trustee Training Week. I'm Jamie Machik with the Nicolay Federated Library System in Green Bay, and with me again is Jean Anderson from South Central. Thank you so much for joining us. We've had some great programs all week, and before I continue with introducing today's speaker, I just want to mention, I know some of you have been listening in most of the week, or maybe today is your first session, or maybe you've just only had time to view the recordings. If you have enjoyed any of this or have found it helpful to you, please mention this to your library system. In the introduction, I showed a slide of the 15 other library systems besides Nicolay who are supporting this training week, not just monetarily, but by hopefully getting the information out to all of you. So if you want these trainings to continue, we need to know that they are helpful and worthwhile and how they can be improved. So please do that. Please pass along those words to your system. We are excited to continue today with Gail Santy, and Gail has been a consultant of the Central Kansas Library System for the past 8 years. Prior to joining the world of libraries, she worked in the Army for 9 years as a Russian and German translator. And like most librarians, she wears a lot of hats: reference, collection management, marketing, outreach, advocacy, but most often calls herself a library cheerleader. Gail lives in a world of possibilities and brings a contagious enthusiasm for new ideas and solutions to help libraries of all sizes to reach for the stars. We've hired Gail a few times. I've seen her speak at conferences, and she is just fabulous, and I know you'll enjoy hearing from her today as well. So, Gail, whenever you are ready.
Jamie, thank you for that wonderful information. I am Gail Santy, and I work for the Central Kansas Library System. One of the things that I need to add to my intro is I have started doing a lot of trustee training. I have a soapbox, and I like to get on it, and I'm going to do that with you all of right now. I believe that library trustees are the most important volunteers in a community. This is not a position where you get to sit and read the books, or if you're a trustee, you get first dibs on the new bestseller. Trustees have the power to change the entire community through their work with the library. Once upon a time, libraries were just warehouses of books, depositories for stuff. The truth is that our profession has always been about connecting people with information. And as trustees, you have the charge to do that with your community. I'm going to talk to you today about library evaluations. The Central Kansas Library System had started doing library evaluations about 7 years ago, and we've probably evaluated 3/4 of our libraries. We have 54 libraries in our system. Those libraries range in size from teeny tiny, like the size of a small living room, to great big libraries. And what we've noticed is that a library can become stagnant, and they can start to march in place. And an evaluation really helps make the library more vibrant. We see these libraries become community gathering places as a result of the evaluations. The librarians are enthused and excited to go to work again. They start really sharing that enthusiasm with the community. We also see, as a result of the evaluations, that it's easier for the library to get vibrant board members because the library has become an exciting place. So I'm going to get started because I want to leave plenty of time to ask questions. This slideshow and a number of supporting documents will be available whenever Jamie makes them live. So let's get started with the why. Why would we consider doing a library evaluation? Well, we know that good management is based on good decision making, and you can only make decisions if you've got good information. When you do a library evaluation as I'm proposing here, you find a lot about your library that you might not never have known before. You're going to find out things like the flashing on the roof needs to be replaced. The windows let in moisture. You don't have all the policies in place that you need. We cover everything in an evaluation, as I say, from tip to tail. We talk about the building exterior, interior policies, technology, just everything. And those are things that you're not normally going to see when you visit the library as a trustee, and those are not things that you're going to notice as someone who works in the library on a daily basis. If you think about sitting on your couch at home and you look across the floor and there's a dust bunny under there, you say to yourself, oh, I see that and I need to get that cleaned up. And next week you look over and it's still there, and the third or fourth time you don't even notice it anymore. This is common. This is not a bad thing. This is just human nature. When we're in the library, it can be the same way. Evaluations help you look at your organization from all angles. You're also going to find out what works, what we should no longer be doing, and what we need to do differently, and what we need to add. A good, honest evaluation will let you know what your library needs to be in your community. My email signature is that the library finds out what the community needs and finds a way to help. That's what an evaluation can do for you. Sometimes we can do surveys, we can ask, and our patrons might not tell us. An evaluation involves other people in the community, and it means that you're going to be getting other voices to help you decide what needs to be changed. A planned change effort can be a tricky thing. The evaluation can be a launching pad for this. It can be someone else coming in and saying, we're noticing these things, we're noticing these patterns, these problems. We see that you're doing the same event and no one shows up. You're having library programs, you're spending a lot of time on this, and you're having one person show up. Or you're doing bulletin boards every month, and we don't see an outcome for that. It can be a scary thing because staff will feel like you're pointing out all the warts, which is not the case. We also make sure to point out everything you're doing right. One of the best things that an evaluation can do is it can motivate a sluggish board or staff, and it can help you make better decisions for spending and for requesting for funding. So the objectives and the goals of a library evaluation. As in every project you do with the library and with the community, communication is key. You need to make sure that the librarian and the board are both in agreement that the evaluation needs to be done, should be done. And you need to communicate the goals of the evaluation with the team. We'll go into detail later about how to recruit a good team. The board and the librarian can be part of that team. I would say also that you want to communicate your goals of the evaluation with your staff. And the goals, two simple questions you can ask yourself. You can go into much more detail, but you really want to know what you want for your library. Do you need new carpet? Do you need to rearrange the stacks? Is the decorating and color scheme in the library the same as when the library was built in the 50s, 60s, 70s? Or do you have that 1980s pale desert sort of a color scheme that is very outmoded? What does your community need the library to be? Do you need a gathering place? Does the community need meeting rooms? Do you need a safe place for kids after school? Do you need things for seniors to do during the day? Do you need more technology training? What does your community need the library to be? We serve our community. So let me just check. You can do, I'm going to go back. Well, I'm just going to leave it here and talk. You can do informal or formal surveys to find out what your community needs the library to be. Or you can just start asking questions to patrons when you interact with them across from the desk or when you're in library programs, when you see them out in the community. I do suggest that you try to get out in the community because you're going to get a broader, more robust range of answers. You might even get a lot of questions. I didn't know the library offered that, would be one of the things. This can be done with a simple bookmark and ask people to put it in a jar, and at the end of the week you draw one person and they get $1 off of fines, or they get bumped up for the bestseller on the holds list, whatever the board decides. So participatory evaluations. Library evaluations are not done in isolation. You're going to try to involve as many stakeholders and key players as possible. As you can see, I suggest staff all the way from the housekeeper up to the director, a select group of patrons who might be a good representation of the demographic of your community. Community members, this includes people who normally don't use the library, volunteers, friends, city personnel, and what we need to know is, what library staff need to know is this is not a personnel evaluation. Their job is not at risk. You're going to talk to evaluators, and this is actually going to be a way for them to learn about the library and what the library does. This is your opportunity to widen their point of view. You're going to build shared commitments because it makes it easier to get the results that you want. Right now this seems in isolation, but it'll all start to make sense. Okay, who to recruit. This is the most important part to me, I think. The truth is that a good evaluation is inclusive, complete, and unbiased. We welcome, and in fact we need, differing viewpoints. If we're all yes men on the evaluation team, we're going to get nowhere. We need differing viewpoints. We're going to look for people who are sensitive, impartial. They don't have an agenda where they want to turn the library into who knows what, a gaming center or whatever. We also want them to be experienced. This can be professional individuals, individuals who belong to service organizations within the community. Evaluators need to understand how the library works, how the library is funded. They need to understand about basic librarianship. And by building skills, we need somebody who can actually evaluate the physical plant of the library. These are not skills that I possess. Luckily, our director does. When he retires next year, we may take our maintenance man with us to do this because he can handle that part. He can get on the roof. He can essentially kick the tires and know if it's in good shape, if the building's in good shape. An assessment team can be done by one person, but it'll take a long time and it's exhausting. It's better to have several members. That way you get more expertise and you get more complete coverage. When you involve your community or community members in the evaluation, it actually improves the library's credibility. And I think more importantly is it increases awareness of the library, of our strengths. It lets more people know what it is we do. And it also is going to let people know about our challenges. If we're the only ones who are saying we need a new roof, that song gets old. But if we have a respected construction expert saying, they need a new roof, that's going to carry a lot more weight. Let's see. Partner with nearby libraries. This is something I highly suggest if your system staff is not able to do this for you. You can partner with a nearby library to exchange an evaluation. You evaluate for them, and they will evaluate for you. I have a full list of documents that when we're talking about the building exterior, I have a checklist of things to look at. So you don't need to be experts on a lot of this stuff. You just need to be aware, and you need to be enthusiastic. It is of utmost importance that you create the proper culture of evaluation. The librarian, the trustees, or the library board, and the library staff need to look at the evaluation as a positive opportunity for growth. Remember, this is not an evaluation of personnel. Their jobs are not in danger. This is not an evaluation of whether their story time is successful or if it's meeting early literacy standards. It's not that. If we're going to evaluate story time in quotation marks, what we're really going to look at is, do they have the space they need? Do they have the right flooring? Do they have the right soundproofing? Do they have the right tools and materials they need to do the job? Are there enough people to do the job? Or are they spending a lot of time cutting out circles when their time could be used more wisely? It is a scary thing for a library staff to find out that they're going to get an evaluation. We find, and we really need to talk a lot about this with the librarian ahead of time, that we're not there to point out everything they're doing wrong. This is critical. It is human nature to want to do things right and to please people, and we find it's important to let them know that we're going to point out what they're doing right. What we also do is visit with the librarian and trustees, sometimes together and sometimes separately, to find out what their goals are for their library and to find out where they see their library fitting in their community. The second bullet here is to involve appropriate staff in the development of the evaluation. The janitor, all the way up, it's important. Not every single person needs to be involved, but it's important that they have a voice. You want to have staff regularly review, discuss, and act on evaluation findings. Board members or trustees and top library leadership and even middle management must own and act on the evaluation findings. And what I mean by that is when we compile the evaluation, we present it in one document. I'm going to have examples of those for you from 2 different libraries. I've kind of made them vanilla and protected the names of the innocent. But you can't take the evaluation document and put it in a drawer and say, well, that's that. We did the evaluation. Everything's hunky-dory. What we suggest our trustees do is that they take the evaluation. Each member has a copy. They read it. And then at the board meeting, when they're talking about future business, they come to an agreement on one thing. What am I going to do, or what are we as the group going to suggest that we do or change from the evaluation to start moving the library forward? When you have staff involved, the staff needs to know what the trustees think is the most important thing to do to move things forward. We can't operate in isolation from one another. It's important to get accurate and especially complete information in the evaluation. One of the reasons that we sometimes speak with the librarian separate from the trustees is because they're going to give us different answers. They might not be in full agreement about what needs to be done or how it needs to be done. One of the things that we look at is to perhaps ameliorate that relationship if it needs to be done. We want everyone to feel like they can provide honest and thoughtful information if they're asked, do you have the right equipment for the job? Does this space meet your needs? Those kinds of questions. Everyone should be able to answer honestly. We're going to hope that you select evaluators who inspire confidence in your community. That means that you're asking respected community members to be part of your evaluation team. The reason for this is because when the evaluation comes back, again, if the roof needs replacing and the city hears it from you again and again and again, it is not the same as hearing it from a respected community member. To me, it's a lot like the librarian saying we need more money, which we know is the case, of course. But how the outside world often perceives that is that we want a raise, and we know that's just not the case. So we want evaluators who inspire confidence in your community, and it's also important to recruit evaluators who will be impartial. We have to be careful with this because we don't want conflicts of interest. We don't want the community to perceive that that's a possibility. The third bullet, I believe, is one of the most important on this page. We need to be absolutely 100% transparent about what we're going to share, who we're going to share it with, and how we're going to use the evaluation to move the library forward. I think the transparency is important. I think that across the country, our taxpayers are very closely looking at every dollar, and for us to be transparent shows that we're sensitive to that and honor that, actually. When the library board and library staff and leadership are committed, they'll provide honest and revealing answers, and those answers can be used to help move the library forward. Okay, I'm going to spend the last half of this presentation talking a little bit about what kinds of things we look at. So when we talk about the building exterior, you can see where having someone who is an expert in general construction would be a big benefit, or a professional handyman or handy gal. We look at the parking lot. Do you have enough spaces? Are they well lit? Are they big enough? Is there room to turn around? We look at the landscaping. Is it attractive? Is it inviting? Is it overgrown? Are there bushes and shrubs that are so overgrown you can't see the library sign? Or you can't even see the open hours? Is there a bike rack? Do you have kids who have to throw their bike on the lawn, or they're chaining them to the light poles, whatever they've got? A bike rack is actually a small thing, but it's kind of important. It shows your kids that they're welcome to be there. Do you have a flagpole? When was the last time it was painted? What condition is the flag in? How are the outside walls? Are they attractive? Are they well maintained? Do you need new paint? How's the front door? One of the things, I'm laughing to myself, I'm afraid that when I retire from the library world, my my blurb that they're going to put in Library Journal is, she hated shabby signs. I've done a number of workshops on library signs, and when I talk about how the front door is, Is the front door so loaded with signs that you can't see it? Are they all stuck on with tape, or are they nice and organized? How does the building look? How's the roof? How are the walls? How's the foundation? Is the roof well maintained, waterproof? Does it have good downspouts? Do you have an outside book drop? Is it in a good location? Is it attractive, or does it need a coat of paint? Do you use the book drop as an opportunity to market library services, library programs perhaps? That might be something you consider. Outside signage to include your hours. Do people have to get out of the building and walk right up to the door to see the hour signs? Or is it visible and can they read it from their vehicle? How about the building inside systems? How's the HVAC? We just went through a major HVAC system here, and that's a nightmare, but it's such a nicer place for staff, but especially for patrons to be. How are the safety systems? How are the exits? Is it structurally sound? Do you have fire extinguishers? Are they regularly inspected? Is staff trained to know how to use them? When we talk about the interior, we talk about the front entrance. When you first step into the library, is it attractive, clean, and clear? One of the things we do when we do these evaluations is we take a lot of pictures. They speak a lot louder than words. When standing at the entrance, is it cluttered, or is it dirty, or is it clean and inviting? Can you see what's available with signs, or do you have to ask to find everything? Is there anything that catches your eye and pulls you to the back of the library? Can you think of changes that would make the library more inviting? This is a lot about the interior design, interior decorations of the library, but really we want to make the library a welcoming space that serves the needs of the community. Is there a quiet seating area? What shape is the flooring in? What are the first impressions that this library makes? Do people say, wow, this is awesome, I can't wait to come back? Or do they feel unwelcome? Is there enough seating? Is it attractive? Is it comfortable? Is there a reading area away from traffic? Is the circulation desk uncluttered? Are the restrooms clean? How's the plumbing? Are the restrooms well lit and ventilated? Is there a drinking faucet? Are there emergency exits, and are they well marked? First impressions are important. When we talk about the organization of the library, this is where having someone with knowledge of librarianship is important. They're going to understand the cataloging system. Is it accurate? Do you have good subject headings? And do the call numbers match the books? Are the materials on the shelves neat, clean? Are they in good condition? Is there a logical flow? We have gone into very small libraries, which are not run by degreed librarians, and we find instead of running left to right and then going down to the left of the next shelf, sometimes they will go left all the way across 4 or 5 different sets of shelving, go down, and then run to the left. It's a librarian's nightmare. But someone who doesn't know librarianship might not know that that is not an industry standard. Are your spine labels on the books consistent? Are they there? Are they neat? Do you use signs for collections and end panels? If you have a courier system, is there a designated spot for that? Is your large print collection in an easily accessible location with good lighting? Do you have microfilm readers? Do you still have encyclopedias? How old is your collection? Especially these key areas, technology, law, medicine, and local history. Do you do library displays? Our form for ADA compatibility is 3 pages long. When we started, we have a lot of libraries that are grandfathered in by the Americans with Disabilities Act. We have a lot of libraries that are retrofit. They were in banks. They still have the vault. They were in community centers. We had one library that was in a home. They have since moved to what used to be a cafeteria, and now it's a really lovely open space. So we made a really big list because we were dealing with a lot here. In the handouts that you'll get, you'll have that full list that we use. Important things to consider are outside and parking, curbs, handicap entrances, your doors outside and inside. Are the doors wide enough? A 1-inch lip on a door threshold means that you can't roll forward in a wheelchair. You're going to have to go backwards, and you might have to tilt. And so that automatically eliminates, in our communities, more than half of the communities, because we're an aging state, from entering the library. Handicap parking spaces should be 8 feet wide by 20 inches long. The curb, we have the right amount of slope, the right angle or tilt on a lateral on a sidewalk. Steps are a certain inch wide. They're at least 11 inches deep. We talk about handrails, and they should be on both sides, and the height possibilities. When we talk about doors, we talk about thresholds of less than ½ an inch. The door needs to be, the hardware, the handle, needs to be 48 inches off the floor. Your door should open at least 90 degrees. You can easily open it. There's space to turn around in a wheelchair. We're not talking about handicap doors where you push the button and it automatically opens. We're talking about regular doors. So if you're doing an evaluation and you're in an aging community, this is critical to bear in mind, especially if you're thinking about doing a remodel. You need your spaces, your aisles within the library need to be arranged properly. Your drinking fountain spouts are 3 inches from the edge. These are not things that we normally consider. We don't think about this because this is not who we are and how we move through life every day. But for those members in your community, if these steps aren't in place, they don't feel welcome in your library because they can't come in. In our libraries, some of the librarians and trustees, when queried, will say, well, nobody ever comes in, nobody's ever complained. Well, they can't come in, and they might not want to be a bother, and that's why they won't complain. We talk about what a handicap restroom consists of. If you have to replace a toilet, you might as well make it the right height. We particularly talk about the library stacks. Perimeter aisles around the stacks need to be 40 inches, and within the stacks, they need to be 36 inches wide. You need to have a section of your circulation desk that's no higher than 3 feet high. You'll find that children will often use that as well. We talk a great deal about library policies. Does your library, do your trustees have policies that are in direct violation of the state law for libraries? This can be the case. It can be that in your policy you say that the treasurer prepares and signs the check. In Kansas law, it is against the law for the treasurer to sign the checks. They need to be signed by the president and the secretary. This is pretty common. Does the library board claim to appoint the board members when in Kansas they're appointed by the mayor? Are any of the policies outdated? Do you have policies on a meeting room that no longer exists, or policies for posting things on a bulletin board that was taken down 5 years ago? That's the kind of thing where we look at, especially when we talk about outdated. We also talk about things like, you can only borrow 5 VHS cassettes and the library hasn't had VHS cassettes in years, those kinds of things. Do policies have confusing wording, and what does it mean? The people who write policies, it may often make very good sense to them, but it might not make good sense to staff who has to reinforce these policies. Are any of the policies difficult to implement? And this can be as simple as no skateboards on library policy after hours. Who's going to patrol the library after hours and police up that policy? Are there policies that seem overly restrictive? For example, two-day checkout on DVDs. Statistics have shown that you actually get more circulation when you have a longer checkout period. People have more time to read. Do you have an overly restrictive and short checkout period on books of all sizes? Is the checkout period the same on a Harlequin romance as it is for War and Peace? Do you have a policy that says no loitering inside the library? Things like this. I would suggest that you consider these policies. Kansas library standards do have a list of the recommended policies, and ask your local system people. They'll be able to help you with this. But consider these policies. You need policies on selecting library materials and managing the collection or weeding, getting rid of things that are not in good shape. Do you have policies on the building or the meeting room use? Do you have personnel policies, of course? Do you have policies on confidentiality for library patron records? How about gifts and donations, appropriate use of online services and technology, and policies on continuing education for library staff? Disaster recovery. We have all of our libraries prepare a policy on disaster recovery. Thank goodness we've never had to implement those policies. Policies on which public services you offer to patrons, intellectual freedom, budget and finance, use of library equipment. Patron behavior is a big one. If you feel that any of your policies might need a look, I suggest that you hit the website, ask or look for library policies from all around the country. A lot of times you'll find that someone else has already done an exceptional job and you just need to localize that. Do you have a policy on how to deal with surplus property? Youth services. We have our youth services consultant evaluate this area. Her top 4 points are that the areas for youth should be friendly and welcoming. Adequate space should be available for storage and for programming. The space should be child-proof. The furnishings, chairs, tables, shelvings, and seating should be appropriate for youth. And one of the questions that she's recently started adding is, does the Youth Services Department collaborate with local entities to provide programs for youth? She also looks at things like, do the doors have safety glass? Can you see all youth areas from the service desk? Do all of the youth services signs comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act? Excuse me. Are there sufficient electrical outlets? Have they been child-proofed? Is the floor surface appropriate for the room use? Are the drinking fountains at the right height? Are there computers, reading tables, family seating? Is the shelving adjustable? And is there a well-maintained and visible entrance into the youth services area? We look at library technology. Are the computers clean? Are the keyboards clean? And you can see their letter. I'm looking down at the keyboard that I'm using right now, and I see I need to get after it. Are the mice clean and do the buttons work? Is software up to date? Do you have working clean peripherals? Do the computer hard drives lock down? Is there a backup process and a schedule for updating? Who does that? Who's responsible for that? Do you have good furniture, printers, and things like that? We also ask if the public computers have software for different age groups. Filtering might be something that you'll look at as well. I do have extra handouts. I'm going to add to this. One of the things that one of our consultants has made is a number of spreadsheets. The shuffler helps you rearrange the library. The collection manager helps you use library statistics to see what you should add to your collection. The data collector is a spreadsheet that with just a little bit of work can be customized to what you need in Wisconsin for your annual report to the state library. We also have library comparisons where you can plug in your information and compare yourself to libraries of similar size. How does your collection look? Do you offer the number of programs? Are you open the right number of hours? How does your physical space compare? Do you have the same number of library visits? More, less? That's something that my colleague has made available. Those are spreadsheets, and like I said, with a little bit of customizing, you can use those in your libraries. After you've had an evaluation, you want to analyze the findings. We've talked about this before. You need to decide as a group how you're going to move forward on this, what's your top priority, and what you want to pocket for now. When you reach this common understanding, it becomes the cornerstone for the group to commit to a plan of action. The plan of action is that you're going to figure out what to improve and when. What this does is it turns the evaluation into positive action steps. Post those, make them public. You never know when somebody might have money to give and they just needed a good cause. What happens is that the librarians, library staff, and library boards become agents of change, and they apply their new knowledge about the library into action steps and improve the library on many levels. I've listed a number of references and resources. Like I said, I am not good about evaluating a building condition. If you can find no one in your community, this building condition manual is pretty awesome. How to conduct a participatory evaluation, how to create a good culture of evaluation, and 6 keys to a successful organization assessment. And I believe that is it. That is it. Does anyone have any questions? I will be very glad to answer questions, discuss, things like that.
Okay, thank you, Gail, for all of the great information. As she said, we do have some time for questions. If you have any, you can submit that in the question box. Gail, I wanted to ask about signage, because I know you actually you did a program for us on that a couple of years ago. What, off the top of your head, and you probably, I know you know this topic well, what off the top of your head, do you just have some basic tips on library signage, that things that we should not be doing?
Oh, well, I would say at a minimum, the things you should have are where to find the bathroom, emergency exits, hours, signs, things that highlight different parts of your collection. Where do they find this or that? If you don't have signage now, don't feel bad. Many libraries don't. In fact, I think that's better than the libraries that have way too much signage. What I always suggest, it's a really low-tech solution, but tape a piece of paper to the circulation desk and have the staff there write down the questions that the wayfinding questions that they have to answer. Where do I find this? Can you tell me where I'd find that? At a glance, someone should be able to come in the library and know where to go. And that may mean that you've got a kiosk that has a map like they do at indoor malls, or a legend, something like that. If you are a multi-floor library, you're going to have that at every level. Things that you shouldn't do, like I said, I'm afraid my library obituary is going to be she hated visible tape, but it gets real shabby. If you do a signage inventory, and that sounds so formal, and it's not. It just means walking around and really looking at the signs you've got up. They should be in good condition. They should be positive messages. They should not be directive or punitive. There are nice ways to ask everything. Remember that your signs are the silent conversation that you're having with your patrons, and look at your signs and see if this is how you really want to communicate with them. Use positive wording. Stick with the same color scheme and the same font. I find that if you don't have money for a full-on library renovation, doing new signs can really give the library a facelift. Be consistent with your message. Put signs in the same place so that people know right where to look. Look at retail and see what they do. Does that help, Jamie?
Yes, thank you. Another question, how often would you do the evaluation?
We have not repeated anybody in 7 years yet. The document that we prepare has close to 50 pages in it. It's got all kinds of stuff in it, and I think it's like a roadmap for the next 10 years at least. As we know, because of the precarious situation we are in library funding, it may take 10 years to get a new roof, or it could take 5 years to lobby support for new carpeting, things like that. One of the things we really try to do is, of course, be realistic about the number of huge projects that need to be done, but also offer a lot of small steps that are going to make a real big impact. And that can be something as little as painting a back wall, rearranging the furniture, just simple stuff.
Great. A question came in about the shelf shuffler. Do people need a login for that?
Oh gosh, no. That is on the CKILS website, and you can have any of that stuff. No, there's no login. You just download the spreadsheet, and you're going to run some statistics from your automated library system, and you're going to pop those statistics in, and then it's going to spit back some answers at you. If you have any questions on that, I think it says that you can contact Chris Ripple, who is my colleague who developed the shelf shuffler.
Okay, great. Another question is, how big of a team do you suggest? Our library serves 30,000 people in a 40,000 square foot building.
Well, the team that we're using is our consulting team here. And honestly, we're consultant heavy. We provide a lot of individualized services and a lot of traditional library services. This is what our librarians want, and this is what we provide. I'm going to write in my head and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 consultants, and the director is what we've got. What we do is we go in and we spend usually the full morning, and then we go back and we write up our evaluation. One of our consultants compiles the information and emails it or prints it out. What we do is each person covers a different area. Did that help?
Yes, thank you. I was at a training not too long ago, and there was this kind of thing was covered about, how the outside of your building looks and things that are nice and neat. And someone in the audience asked, for people who are, desperate to use the library, or that's their only, source of information or place to go, does that stuff really matter? I mean, not that it doesn't matter, but are you going to turn? Are people going to not walk in your doors?
Yes. Yes, they are. If you have more than one grocery store in your town, and one grocery store is tidy, neat, staff is smiling and friendly, and they may not have everything you need, and in fact their costs may be a little bit higher, but if you've had a good experience at that that grocery store, that's where you're going to go. People do have choices. They can always go somewhere else, or they can just not go. People have choices.
Great, thank you. Another question is, when you've done evaluations, do you ever have staff who are, I guess, intimidated or afraid they're going to get reprimanded, and how do you, as if you're a trustee or a board member listening, and how do you help with that?
Well, I talked about creating that positive culture of evaluation for a reason. We have come across this ourselves. There it is. I just need to see where I was. It's important for staff to know that this is not punitive. It's not critical. Their jobs are not in danger. If we'll talk about youth services, for example, you're going to have someone outside evaluate according to the questions on the page. It does not hurt to give them that questionnaire themselves and have them fill it out, because they know what's wrong. They may even put things on the paper that are not asked because they know what's wrong. They may have enough outlets, but half of them don't work. They're going to know. This is an opportunity for their voice to be heard, for their concerns to be aired, and for their problems to be recognized. One of the most difficult things a leader can go through is managing change. There are lots and lots of articles and all sorts of information out on the web on managing your team through change. And if you find that people are just really reluctant to have an evaluation, I suggest you look at some of those managing through change things, because your team may need that. But what we find is if they have a voice and their concerns are listened to, they're more open and adaptive to that change that needs to be made.
Great. Another question. So as far as youth services or children's areas, that I think we would all agree that is an area where we want to encourage play and creativity, and we want kids to feel comfortable. So how do you maintain, I guess, some order in that area, so to speak?
I always think it's a lot like having a lot of young children at home. One of the things I think that's important is to have that built-in storage and built-in space for programming. If we're talking about order as it relates to keeping the materials on the shelves in correct library Dewey order,
I think I meant more like just keeping the area neat and not like a tornado went through it, like with
so
children's play.
An important thing to realize is that after story time, it's going to look like a tornado hit. Part of your story time planning needs to have cleanup afterwards, and that doesn't just mean cleaning up after the craft or the snack. That means needs to clean up after the space. I'm going to give a really simple solution, and I had 3 boys under the age of 3 at home, and about an hour before Dad would come home from work, because I was a stay-at-home mom, about an hour before Dad would come home from work, we would go through and tidy up. It is just something that has to be regularly done. You need to acknowledge it and build time in your schedule for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Part of the nitty-gritty.
Yes.
librarianship.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you again, Gail, for all of the great information. It was another great session today. I want to remind all of you that tomorrow is our final session called Wisconsin Trustees You Ask, We'll Answer, with three panelists. Three system directors are going to be here to take your questions, and they can be really on anything that you might have about library systems, your role as a trustee, your role as a friend. If you have a question right now and you want to submit it, you can go to our website, wistrusteetraining.com, go to the Ask the Panel section, and I have it up on the screen, and you can simply fill out this form, hit submit, and we will get to your question tomorrow. Otherwise, if you think of something tomorrow that you want to ask, we can get to that as well. You can also still register for that session if you just want to listen in by going to register. So that will also be at 12 p.m. So thank you again, Gail. Thank you all for listening in and participating today. I hope you all have a great day and a great rest of your week, and I hope to see some of you here tomorrow as well. So long.